Okay, in this video I want to prove numerically that those people that claim that more guns means more homicides is in fact a false statement. I'm going to race through these sources and statistics and numbers and go ahead and pause at any time and check them if you'd like. So, okay, here we go. Wikipedia says that the United States has about 88.8 guns per every 100 people. And they also say we have about 308,745K residents and just under 13K annual homicides. Then you divide those two numbers as shown, and you'll get a number about 4.6 homicides per every 100K guns in the country. Now take all that Wikipedia data and cut and paste it right into an Excel spreadsheet. A couple alignments, once you get everything lined up, this is what you get. Now you can easily just convert this to a bar chart. Take a look at this. United States is ranked 14th on the planet using this ratio. Now keep in mind, this chart is a ratio of homicides to available firearms. This is a more accurate representation of how more or less firearms affect more or less homicides. Now the reason this ratio of guns to homicides is a more accurate representation than simply selecting some countries and saying more is less or less is more can be illustrated as follows. Let us just say we had 10 household refrigerators to analyze, and we were supposed to monitor the junk food and junk food consumption in each. Now in the first refrigerator on the left, which we'll call Japan, it has 5 junk food items and 4 junk food consumptions. Now the next 8 refrigerators, labeled Europe 1 through 8, represent the majority of all refrigerators and have a range of available junk food from 6 to 9 and an consumption range from 4 to 8. And lastly, on the right, we have the U.S. refrigerator with 100 junk food items and 15 junk food consumptions. Now, if you were to oversimplify this and make the statement that in general those refrigerators with more junk food had more junk food consumption, you wouldn't be very far from the truth. But making the claim that more junk food availability is more junk food consumption is false, and let me show you why. Notice that in all the refrigerators there was not a single refrigerator that had all of the junk food consumed. Not unlike guns and homicide rates, junk food consumption always is represented by a limited demand, and junk food availability is always represented by a supply that exceeds the demand. Because of the wild ambiguity in the ratio between the U.S. fridge consumption and available junk food to the rest of the fridges, no claim can be supported as to whether more or less junk food can support a finite consumption. This claim does, however, support a visual observation of a general trend. The most interesting and defining point about this chart is that the U.S. fridge has such a huge overabundance of junk food that there's probably no way you can set a proportional relationship to the demand versus supply. The ambiguity on this chart requires an alternative method of analysis. Not unlike the ratio of available firearms to homicides, the U.S. refrigerator demonstrates that the extreme overabundance of junk food has satisfied the junk food consumption to the point where large degrees in a percentage of increases or reductions to that available junk food will not proportionally affect the junk food consumption. In other words, just like firearms and homicides, you can only consume so much junk food no matter how much is available. In addition, the overabundance of available junk food, just like the overabundance of available firearms, would not significantly affect that junk food consumption or homicide rate. This is because it's relatively finite. Now, as mentioned previously, the degree of ambiguity in these relationships can better be illustrated with a ratio by dividing the two as shown in this chart. This chart is laid out using the same means as the firearms and homicides. Notice the U.S. refrigerator on the right with the lowest rate of consumption to available junk food. This refrigerator has so much available junk food that it wouldn't matter if you doubled it or you cut it in half. The simple fact that the finite demand of junk food consumption has been met, so the supply will not affect it significantly. This is why it can't be claimed that there is a correlation between available junk food and junk food consumption, just like firearms and homicides. And that is precisely why this ratio of homicides to guns is the perfect visual means to prove that nobody can claim more guns is more homicides or less guns equals less homicides. These additional charts of the country's ratios can be paused anytime if you'd like to examine them more closely. Here is a specific chart I put together with key countries in the world, but Russia has so much crime they've disproportioned the chart. Here's the same chart without Russia. Now, if you really believe that less firearms is going to mean less homicides, then how can you explain these countries shown like Japan with less firearms, or Europe or the UK with less firearms, or even Canada? All of these countries have a higher homicide rate to available guns than the United States. Yet gun advocates continue to argue that less firearms in the United States will mean a lower homicide rate. Also note that the reason Serbia and Yemen is on this chart is because they're usually ranked 2 and 3 in the world as far as guns per capita. So they're another country with a lot of guns. So I wanted to put those two countries on here to show you that that's another example of where more guns equals less homicides. As a matter of fact, Serbia is better than the United States in the top 14. Now let's take a look at Switzerland. Most of you already know why Switzerland's on here. For those of you who don't, Switzerland encourages every household to have a firearm in it. Matter of fact, Switzerland has more firearms per household than any country on the planet. The United States has more per capita. Switzerland has more per household. Switzerland's homicide rate is consistently in the top 5 in the world. These statistics are overwhelming proof that regardless of what the anti-gun crowd believes, homicides are not a result of more or less firearms. So let's put this argument to rest once and for all. The next time somebody says that less guns equals less homicides or more guns equals more homicides, they're wrong. It's absolutely not true. And send them this video if you'd like to show them why.